I never thought I'd be the kind of guy to get blindsided like this. I mean, I always thought I knew Lauren, my wife, pretty damn well. We met in college, got married 5 years ago, and for the most part things seemed solid. Or so I thought. She was the typical high-maintenance, bitchy kind of girl, sharp-tongued, quick to lie, but she had this way of making you think she was all about the marriage, about us. I worked a decent job as a project manager, and Lauren was always a little flaky about her career, but she loved the lifestyle, the luxury, designer bags, fancy dinners, a lot of traveling. Honestly, I was happy enough. I never doubted her. But over the last few months, things started to feel different, a little off. She'd come home late more often, so late I'd be asleep by the time she got back. When I'd ask her where she'd been, she'd brush it off with some snarky comment about work or a drinks with the girls. Yeah, right. I started catching her on her phone more, hiding her messages, acting annoyed if I even glanced at her screen. She'd give me these quick, bitchy retorts, like she was trying to shut me down before I could ask questions. Little things, but they added up. And then there were the excuses, always about how I was overthinking, that I was paranoid, that she didn't have time for my insecurities. One night I was at home, just kicking back after a long day, scrolling through some of the photos she posted online. I noticed she'd uploaded a new one, this picture of her in some tropical place, but what caught my eye was the background, the shadows. The shadows were strange. They seemed darker, elongated almost, intimate, and I swear I saw a figure behind her, a guy. I blinked, convinced I was imagining things, but then I kept staring. Something about it didn't sit right. Who takes a photo like that? I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to it. I felt this weird, creeping suspicion. The next day I started looking more closely at her social media, her texts, anything I could find. That's when I found it. A series of messages, flirty, suggestive, between her and some guy named Ryan, the documentary cinematographer she was working with for that project on indigenous rights. I knew she was filming some crisis in South America, but I never suspected she'd be sleeping with the guy. Her explanation was bullshit from the start. She said Ryan was just a friend, a professional colleague, that I was reading too much into it. Yeah, right. I could see the way she lied, smirking, dismissive, throwing in her bitchy attitude whenever I pressed her. She's good at that, twisting things around to make me look insecure, jealous, crazy. But I wasn't stupid anymore. The evidence was right there, glaring at me. I felt sick, betrayed, angry, and stupid for not seeing it sooner. That's when I realized I was living with a woman who could lie with a straight face about anything. That her relationship with Ryan wasn't just professional, it was something more. And I wasn't going to just let her get away with it. Not this time. I decided I needed to confront her, see how far she was willing to go. And honestly, I was about to tear her world apart. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat there, staring at the phone with those messages open on the screen. I felt like my chest was tightening, like someone had clenched a fist around my heart. How could she do this? After everything we'd been through, her bitchy attitude, her endless lies, the way she acted like she was too good for anything serious. And Ryan, the guy was just a tool in her game. I knew she liked to play people, liked to manipulate, but this was a whole new level of betrayal. In the morning, I knew I had to do something. I couldn't just sit around and pretend everything was fine. I needed to find her, confront her face to face. So I waited until she got back from her work trip, which I now knew was a lie. I had already called in sick, prepared myself to get this over with. When she finally walked through the door, I was already waiting in the living room, my arms crossed, eyes cold. Her face changed when she saw me there. That bitchy smirk she always threw on, like she thought I was just overreacting, like I was some cuckold. "What are you doing here, Mike?" "I thought I told you I was working late," she said, trying to sound casual, but her voice cracked just a little. "I know what you've been doing," I said, voice low but hard. "I saw the messages, the photos, the way you've been lying to me. Ryan, right? The cinematographer you've been sleeping with. How long has this been going on?" She blinked, then scoffed. "Oh, please, you're crazy. You're just jealous because I've been working hard and you're too insecure to handle it. Ryan's just a friend. You're overreacting as usual." I couldn't believe her. That was her go-to line: deny, deny, deny. But I'd had enough. "No, Lauren, I'm not crazy. You've been cheating behind my back with this guy and you think I'm just supposed to accept it. You're the one who's been lying and sneaking around. I saw the messages, I saw the photos, and I know about the shadow picture. How long have you been hiding this?" She stepped closer, her eyes flashing with contempt. "You think I care what you know? Honestly, Mike, I've had enough of your paranoia. I do what I want. I don't owe you any explanations. Ryan's just a guy I work with. You're just jealous because I'm successful and you're stuck in your boring little life. Maybe if you actually did something interesting, you'd stop acting like a jealous little boy." I felt my stomach turn, her words, her attitude, like she was proud of this, like I was nothing. That's when I realized I was dealing with someone who's beyond just cheating. She was playing me, using this as some sort of power move. I was furious, but I also felt helpless. Still, I had to keep going. I told her if she didn't come clean, I'd find a way to end this marriage for good. She laughed then, a cold, sharp laugh that made my blood run cold. "You really think I care? You're weak, Mike. You always were. You're just a boring, insecure guy who's too scared to face the truth. Ryan and we've been having real fun, real sex. Unlike your pathetic attempts at being a husband. You're nothing but a boring loser, and I'm done pretending to be happy with you." Her voice was harsh, her words like knives. That was the moment I knew I had to do something drastic. I looked at her, feeling everything inside me burn. I didn't know exactly what I'd do next, but I knew it was over. Maybe I'd kick her out, maybe I'd just leave. But I sure as hell wasn't staying silent anymore. The betrayal had cut too deep. My wife, the woman I trusted, was out there screwing someone else while I was at home, pretending everything was fine. That's when it hit me, this wasn't just about the cheating anymore. It was about respect, about who she really was, and I was done being her fool. After that confrontation, everything changed. I couldn't look her in the eyes without feeling this gnawing sense of betrayal that wouldn't go away. I kept replaying her words, her smirk, her coldness, and I started to see her for what she really was, someone who'd lie, cheat, and manipulate just to keep her little world intact. I knew I had to do something, but I hadn't yet figured out what. For days, I felt like I was walking around in a fog, angry but unsure how to handle it. One thing I couldn't shake was the feeling that I had to find some concrete proof, something undeniable that I could use to really make her see how deep her lies. When I started digging through her phone, her email, her social media, it was a mess, honestly. I found more messages, some intimate, some just flirty. She wasn't exactly hiding her feelings. She was proud of what she was doing. I even found a few photos she'd sent Ryan, a couple even more revealing than the one I initially saw. It was clear this was more than just a fling. It was an affair, plain and simple. But what really hit me hard was the correspondence I found while reviewing some raw footage from her latest project. She'd been working on this documentary about indigenous rights violations in South America. I was going through the footage, just trying to see what she'd been filming lately, when I noticed some shadows. Shadows that didn't quite match what I expected. And then I saw it. The shadows embracing, touching, that intimate connection that was supposed to be purely professional. And behind those shadows I saw her, or at least her silhouette, leaning into Ryan's shadow as if they were in some secret world only they knew about. It was unmistakable and I couldn't believe my eyes. At first I doubted myself. Maybe I was imagining things. Maybe it was just the lighting, but I kept watching, zooming in, trying to see if I was crazy. It was real. They weren't just talking or working, they were kissing, holding each other. It was like my entire world was crumbling while I watched their shadows intertwine. I felt sick again, this time worse than before. I had caught her in her own lies, and this was the proof I needed. I knew I had to confront her again. But this time I was going to be ready. I'd gather everything, the messages, the photos, the footage, and I'd show her she couldn't lie her way out of this one. I wasn't just a jealous husband anymore. I was the guy who'd finally seen through her bullshit and was ready to expose her for what she really was. I couldn't believe I'd been so blind, so naive, to think this woman was ever loyal. Now, I had her cornered, and I was about to make her regret ever messing with me. But even as I prepared to blow everything up, I felt a strange mix of relief and dread. Because I knew once I revealed the truth, there was no going back. She'd be exposed, and I'd have to face the consequences of what this meant for us. Still, I told myself I wouldn't be the guy who just takes it anymore. I was done being the fool. If she thought she could cheat and lie her way out of this, she was dead wrong. I spent the next couple of days collecting everything I had, screenshots of the messages, the photos she sent Ryan, the footage of their shadows embracing. I felt like I was living in a nightmare. Every time I tried to process it, my mind kept circling back to what she said, how she lied, how she sneered at me like I was nothing. It was infuriating, but I knew I had to be strategic. If I was going to do this right, I needed to confront her with everything, face her on her own turf, so to speak. Finally, I decided to set a trap. I told her I wanted to talk seriously, no more bullshit. I told her I had something important to discuss about our marriage. She was dismissive, of course, but I could tell she was annoyed I was calling her out again. She came home that evening with her usual attitude, acting like she was the queen of the world. I didn't hold back. I printed out all the evidence I'd gathered, laid it on the table, and stared her down. "Lauren," I started, voice steady but low, "I know what you've been doing. I know about Ryan. I know about the shadows. I know everything." Her eyes widened for a second, then her lips curled into that bitchy smirk again. "Oh, come on, Mike," she snorted. "That's just some footage you found. You're overreacting. You always blow things out of proportion. Ryan's just a friend. You're insecure. You're jealous. Honestly, you're pathetic." I shook my head, feeling the anger boil up in me. "No, Lauren, this isn't just some stupid mistake. I saw the shadows, I saw the messages, and I saw the photos. You've been lying to my face for months. How long has this been going on?" She crossed her arms, her voice dripping with contempt. "Look, I don't have to explain myself to you. I do what I want. If you're too weak to handle that, that's your problem. Besides, Ryan and it's none of your business. You're just a boring little man who can't handle a real woman." That was the breaking point. I'd never seen her so openly contemptuous, so dismissive of everything we had. I realized then that she didn't care about our marriage, about what I thought or felt. She was just using me, playing her little games, and she thought she could get away with it forever. But I wasn't going to let that happen. I told her that I was done. I told her I was going to leave, set her straight about what was coming. I didn't care if she lied her way out of it or if she tried to turn it around on me. I had enough. I was tired of being the fool, tired of feeling like I was walking on eggshells every time I came home. I just wanted out of this nightmare. Her reaction. She looked at me like I was crazy, like I was some desperate fool trying to cling to a sinking ship. She spat. "You really think you can threaten me? Go ahead. Leave. See how far that gets you. Ryan and we're just getting started, and honestly, I don't care if you know the truth. It won't change anything. I'll find someone new, someone better, someone who appreciates me." That's when I realized she was beyond redemption. She was completely lost in her own lies, her own arrogance, and I knew I had to get out. I didn't want to stay in that toxic mess anymore. I packed a bag that night, told her I was leaving, and then I just walked out the door, feeling both relief and devastation. I'd finally seen her for what she was, an unfaithful, manipulative woman who thought she could use me and discard me like garbage. As I drove away, I felt a strange sense of clarity. I'd been blind for too long, but now I saw everything. The betrayal, the lies, the way she'd treated me like I was nothing. And honestly, I wasn't sure if I'd ever really get over it. But I knew one thing for sure. I was done pretending, done trying to hold onto a relationship that was already dead. It was time to start rebuilding my life again, even if it hurt like hell. The days that followed were a blur. I moved out. Stayed with a friend for a while, just trying to breathe. The house felt cold and empty without her, and every corner seemed to whisper reminders of what I'd lost. I kept replaying the confrontation, her smirks, her lies, the way she dismissed everything I ever believed in. Honestly, it was hard to accept that the woman I married, the woman I thought I knew, had been hiding such a deep, ugly secret. And Ryan, her supposed friend, was just another piece of the puzzle I hadn't wanted to see. But I didn't just want to walk away broken. I knew I had to do something, not just for myself, but also to put an end to her games. So I started planning my next move. I contacted a lawyer, filed for divorce, something I never thought I'd do so coldly. I wanted her to see that I wasn't helpless, that I was taking control of my life again. I also decided I'd confront Ryan directly. if I could find him. Because this wasn't just about Lauren's lies, it was about making sure everyone knew what she really was. While all this was happening, I stayed quiet. I didn't want to give her the satisfaction of seeing me crumble. Instead, I focused on myself, working out, reconnecting with old friends, trying to rebuild some semblance of normalcy. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd only scratched the surface. There was still more about her and Ryan I hadn't seen, and I needed closure. One day I received an anonymous tip. Someone had sent me a link, an encrypted file, promising to reveal everything. When I opened it, I saw the full, unedited footage of her shadows embracing Ryan. It was worse than I imagined, more intimate, more revealing. It confirmed what I already knew. She'd been cheating on me for months and she didn't even care. That moment, looking at the footage, felt like the final nail in the coffin of my marriage. I'd been through so much anger, sadness, betrayal, but now I just felt hollow. Like I'd been played for a fool, and no amount of apologies or explanations could fix that. The hardest part was realizing I'd put so much into this relationship, years of love, trust, future plans, and it all meant nothing to her. She thrown it away like it was trash. I felt stupid for believing in the fairy tale, for thinking she was the woman I married, but I also felt a strange sense of liberation. I was finally seeing the truth clearly, even if it hurt. I knew I had to let go of her, of this nightmare, and move on, so I made my decision. I'd fight for my dignity, stand up for myself, and rebuild from the ashes. I didn't want her to win, not in any way. I wanted her to know that her lies and her betrayal had consequences, and that I was not going to be her pawn anymore. I started focusing on myself, on healing, and on making sure I'd never get caught off guard like this again. Because the worst part wasn't just what she did, it was realizing how much trust I'd wasted on someone who didn't deserve it. That's the lesson I'm trying to hold on to now. Trust is fragile and betrayal cuts deep, but you can survive it. You just have to be willing to face the truth, no matter how ugly it gets. Looking back now, I realize how much I let myself get pulled into her world without seeing the signs. You always hear about red flags, but she was so good at hiding hers that I ignored everything until it was too late. That pile of evidence, the explicit footage, the lies, I kept telling myself maybe she'd come back, maybe she'd apologize, maybe she'd explain, but deep down I knew that was just wishful thinking. She wasn't the woman I married. She was someone else entirely, someone I didn't recognize anymore. The process of moving on has been brutal. I won't lie. There are nights when I still feel the sting, when the betrayal hits me all over again. But I've learned something valuable. I learned to trust my gut more, to recognize signs of manipulation and lies sooner. I also learned that sometimes the truth needs to be exposed, even if it destroys everything in the process, because hiding from it only prolongs the pain. Facing it head-on, even if it's ugly, is what finally sets you free. Now I focus on rebuilding myself. I've cut ties with her completely. No contact, no regrets. It's not about revenge anymore. It's about reclaiming my life and dignity. I've started therapy, worked on my confidence, and reminded myself that I am worth more than someone who cheats and lies. The scars will heal and I'll move forward. I don't regret the pain. Without it, I wouldn't know how strong I can be. If there's one thing I want anyone reading this to remember, it's this. Don't ignore the signs. Don't dismiss your feelings. And most importantly, don't stay in a situation where you're being disrespected or lied to. The truth might hurt in the short term, but it's always better than living a lie. Trust your instincts, confront the darkness, and don't be afraid to walk away. Because in the end, your happiness and self-respect are worth more than any betrayal.